12 features every modern MMORPG should have. Over the last 15 years, MMOs have changed in some areas quite a lot since Ultima Online and EverQuest launched. While some changes have been welcome, others have often been faced with harsh critique. I tried to sum of the top 12 of best features in MMOs. Why 12? Well, I started with 10, but I found I needed 12 to fill what seemed important to me. This is no top 12 because it isn't really in any particular order. So here comes. Number 1. Public quests and events. One of the coolest features first introduced by Warhammer Online were the public quests. And almost everyone agreed this feature was about to stay. Guild Wars 2 even built its entire game around these, doing entirely away with normal quests. My personal favorite variant, however, remains Rift, with the namesake Rift Invasions. Personally, I found Guild Wars 2 without normal quests a bit lacking direction. In the end, I was more running around aimless trying to fill another heart. But well-scoped invasion scenarios can really spice things up. In Rift, with an elemental rift opening, the mobs wandered over the maps, even invading NPC cities, so people had to cooperate to keep the world safe. It really created a feeling of community, a real threat. It is something Elder Scrolls Online really should have taken a look at, because that is what Elder Scrolls really lacked the most, is feeling of true dangers, of big badass invasions. Number 2. Large group handling. A MMO of today really must be able to handle large groups of people, and one of the MMOs which does this best is Guild Wars 2. Here you can really see large amount of people fighting, either in open PvP or world events, and it still looks lush and beautiful. This is what makes big fights cool, that you have a ton of people involved and it feels like a really big event. Number 3. Multi-classing open class system. One of the worst things from the MMO tradition is the old-fashioned class system. The problem here is that you have to make the most important decision what class to play right away when you know close to nothing about the game. So you are then shoehorned into one class all the way, or it's reroll. Multi-classing, open classes, combined classes, all these are ways to give you the chance to develop your character over time in any direction you want. Elder Scrolls Online has done this quite well, but also Archage. You get a starter class, but from that on you can develop your character in virtually every direction and even change it in any time if you are unhappy the way your class combo feels. Number 4. Housing. I've always felt sort of disconnected to MMOs where I have no housing, and particularly this is so because my first MMO, Star Wars Galaxies, had the best housing system hands down. But not every housing system is equally good. For instance, Lord of the Rings Online had instance houses. Far away from any in-game functionality, the houses were rarely visited as a result, and more a fig leaf implementation. Houses have to be either close to where the action is, like suburbs in Archage, or the instances in a capital city as in EverQuest 2, or have a large variety of functionality like in Star Wars Galaxies. It is just a cool thing to have your trophies in your house to show your friends and gather mementos over the years, which remind you of the early adventures, especially if your house is part of an active community as it was in Star Wars Galaxies. Number 5. Non-combat classes. One of the features Star Wars Galaxies was most popular for was the great implementation of non-combat classes. You had so much stuff to do other than killing and fighting, so after hours of combat and adventure you could swap over to your entertainer, go on a gig with your dancers and musician group, hold roleplay events, make parties or whatever you want. Then of course creature handlers, taming all the various creatures, or even image designers, which gave all sorts of visual change from a simple haircut to a total makeover. The large variety of social non-combat classes really brought life to Star Wars Galaxies like to no other MMO. Number 6. Open World. One of the things I always find lame and kill my interest in MMOs really quickly is when I feel confined and led down narrow pathways. This is an element where World of Warcraft really shines. You can travel all over the world, there aren't any gateways between the various zones, and while there are isles and a few load screens, overall the continents are all open from top to bottom. I recall still how I rolled my first character, a night elf, and travelled to my friends who played humans all the long and dangerous journey, which took me a few hours to perform, including several deaths. But this really gave me the feeling to be in a world more than in just a simulated small region. It remains one of the biggest letdowns of games like Star Wars The Old Republic, where almost every planet is either small or gated like a labyrinth, with clearly defined limits to where you should go. Games like the old Vanguard or the actual Arch-Age are so much better when you really have big-ass open worlds to get lost in. Number 7. Full crafting. I'm not a big crafter, admittedly, but I like MMOs where literally all items you can get can be crafted. It just makes the entire economy so much more interesting. When you want something, you can learn to make it yourself. It may not be easy, but you can. No matter if it's mounts or furniture, of course armors, weapons and all sorts of items of convenience, it is much better to open all items in a game to the community to craft them, instead of keeping the control over them in the developer's hand. It creates such a cool social aspect and gives worlds a much more realistic feeling. If you see items and you know this item can be crafted by a player and it is not just some sort of fake. Number 8. Stunning visuals. Well, this is something that should be taken for granted. Alas, it is not. After all, a MMO, like all games, is a visual thing. You look at stuff. I found it surprising how many expensive AAA's MMO fail in at least one category of visuals. Good visuals break down in 3 areas: world, gear and animation. Granted, the world design is a matter of taste and choice, but personally said, games like Wildstar have, in my very personal opinion, overdone the cartoony style in their world design. While I liked the character design, the world felt way too less like a world with its Playmobil-like world design. It is often a question of placement also. I found Lord of the Rings in its time and Guild Wars 2 in present one of the most visually appealing worlds. Also of importance is gear. From fashion to armor, gear needs to have a great variety and it needs to look appealing. Elder Scrolls Online is a modern MMO which falls especially flat on this aspect. Too much gear here looks like painted on the skin with no depth. It looks lackluster and too much like sackcloth. A really cool looking selection of gear is in Guild Wars 2, which really has a lot of depth and detail. Finally, animation. This is too often neglected. Games like Star Wars The Old Republic and Elder Scrolls Online, despite having big budgets, have lame and average animations. The feet don't stand right on the slopes, the body doesn't properly react to a sudden halt movement, and the combat is just dull hacking on each other. On the other hand, games like Guild Wars 2 and Arch-Age have so kick-ass cool animations. Once I experienced them, seeing my car cartwheeling over the enemy, or just have the way my tiny Azura was carrying a really heavy big weapon on its shoulders, I have a hard time to go back to the average boring animations of other MMOs. Number 9. Storytelling. Every MMO needs some sort of storytelling. Combat and sandbox is good, but most people want some cool stories, memorable characters, something going on in the world. One of the best implementation I've seen this hands down is Star Wars The Old Republic. There are so many memorable characters, you have choices in almost every story with different results. You have great dialogues to listen, not just some lame text boxes. You see the story happening around you, you are part of it. The first time I saw this really cool storytelling involving me was in Lord of the Rings Online, especially in the many book quests. For the first time, it was not just go there, do this, given by some stationary NPC, but the story happened around me, with the NPCs at my side. Star Wars The Old Republic handled this grouping especially well in the aspect of story. You could always bring in friends, they would witness the dialogues, open stories would involve even multi-person dialogues, with all group members participating in the story. The worst example here is Elder Scrolls Online, where you're not often phased out, but you don't partake in a common dialogue, you don't see if your group member is in dialogue or if he's just AFK. In an MMO supposed to be so story-focused as Elder Scrolls Online, it remains a mystery to me why they copied none of Star Wars The Old Republic's really cool cooperation features. Number 10. Diverse races. I will never understand why so many MMOs cater so much the always same boring standard fare. Human, elf, dwarf. Haven't we seen that enough now? And no game ever let me down here so much as Star Wars The Old Republic. Is there any universe which potentially more cool races than Star Wars? There is so much lore to use, and what did we get? 8 different variants of humans. Red-skinned humans, humans with horns, green-skinned humans, blind humans, blue-skinned humans. Wow, that's really effort. I will never forget the absurd statement of Daniel Eriksson, people cannot identify with non-humans. That is so absurd. People play minotaurs, fairies, cat, dog and rat people, Wookiees and pandas, and they love it. Number 11. Replayability. A lot of people love to play alts, second, third, fourth characters and even more. I would guess that the majority of long-time players have multiple max-level characters. People just love to try out some other class, some other backgrounds, and they want to see different content. This is of course difficult to handle. First, worlds have to be big. They have to have enough content to see other stuff and do other quests in a replay. World of Warcraft was really getting that pretty good from start. Even early on in the vanilla World of Warcraft, you could go to a lot of different places, even within one faction, and if you had seen all that, you could try out the other faction. Different story choices in Star Wars The Old Republic are also an interesting and good way. Decide for the evil decision next time and see what happens. Replayability is really an important feature in an MMO to have right away. And finally, number 12, the interesting and balanced reward system. This is somewhat difficult to describe. Every player has a different personal skill and a different amount of time he can invest in an MMO. Now what I expect from an MMO is that even if I have little time, say just 1 or 2 hours, I want to achieve something. I want to finish my 2 hours with the feeling, okay, I have made some progress, I saw something new and cool. I got a new sword or a new pair of gloves or a fancy hat. Something small, funny, cool. It can also be fluff trophies which have no real logical function, like the skeleton device in Elder Scrolls Online, which doesn't do anything, it just allows you to look like a skeleton. MMOs need fluff, and you need to have some feedback that even a small, short gameplay session gave you something. They need to be big as rewards for difficult and time-consuming challenges, but also give something to casual players, and give cool and fancy items, not just better stats. Just look at Guild Wars 2, how many people just wear fancy gear to look unique? It isn't enough to have just dull gear with better stats. People want to look weird or funny at times, or just unique. Dying systems should be mandatory, and if you give players a pet, don't give them stuff like a mud crab, like ever. People want dogs or cats or even spiders. Games need fluff and fun. Some games take themselves here way too serious, like Star Wars The Old Republic, where there is almost no fun and fluff stuff at all, and over time it gets so dull. It really harkens back to the days of EverQuest 2, where I often could grind quests for weeks, and then I got a lame-looking piece of shoulder pads. And for goodness sake, give people choices. Nothing is so demotivational to really work hard on a difficult quest and then your mage gets a piece of plate mail with no alternative reward to use. This is just a mockery on the effort of the player who wants to invest into a game and feel welcome by it. Well, this is my personal list of the 12 features every good MMO should take heed of, and let me know in comments what you think.